Whenever we see older generations portrayed in the media, there seems to be a distance laid out between their generation and ours. We wouldn't have done that in my day. This is the sort of thing my granddad says to me, and it's the narrative that's assigned to older generations in children's films especially. It's a line which is used to substantiate generational change, one which implies we're moving forward into the future. To some extent, we are. Our generation has overseen some changes so big that they've changed the social landscape of our world forever. As of 2008, when I was actually just 8 years old, the world's urban population surpassed the numbers of us living rurally for the first time in history. So why is this a big deal? It's estimated that by 2050, some 70% of us will be living in urban towns and cities. This change is unprecedented not only by its very happening, but by the rate that it's happened as well. The first pastoral societies, those which came after primitive hunter-gatherer tribes, emerged around 12,000 years ago. Now this dates back to the Neolithic Age, or the Stone Age, a time when humanity was going through a revolution of sorts. Larger settlements replaced these tribes and became the urban hub, if you like, from which population grew. So from then, it's taken 12,000 years for us to get to 50% of us living urbanly. If we work from the continued rate of social movement that's forecasted, 2050 minus 2008 is 42. So it will take us just 42 years to get from 50 to 70% of us living urban lifestyles. But it took us more than 280 times this to get to 50% in the first place. This is what I call time travel. The rate of change is increasing so quickly that even a decade's difference has huge implications. Viewing it in this way allows me to empathize with older generations. We're used to this rate of change. We haven't known anything different. There is no prior model to work to. This really is the future, and it's up to us what we make of it. There's a myriad of other changes to consider, but one which is becoming pervasive and divisive in our society is the internet. On the 6th of August 1991, the World Wide Web went live to the world. Look at our world now. Think about a day at work, a day at school, getting a job, buying a house, sharing ideas without it. Within these 26 years, the internet has changed how we interact with the world, how we interact with each other. Again, it was only around 100 years ago that commercial planes allowed us to fly around the world. Thanks to the internet, I can connect with someone on the other side of the world in fractions of a second. I can talk to them in real time, and I can see their face as well. This is what I call time travel. There's no wonder my granddad wouldn't have done that in his day. He didn't have the option to. Technological advancement has moved forward so quickly that it's only our generation that have had these opportunities. The point I'm making is that the world we live in today, the only world my generation has known, isn't comparable to what came before it. Older generations didn't have the option of free communication or relatively easy migration. Communities were much more defined and much less transient. We live in a world where we are better connected than ever before. We can travel more than ever before. We have more opportunity than ever before to communicate, to understand, and to share. So why aren't we? Max Weber, one of the founding fathers of sociology, was concerned with modernity. He commented that the fate of our society was characterized by the disenchantment of the world. Disenchantment is defined as a feeling of disappointment about something or someone that you previously respected or admired. How can generations respect and admire concepts they don't understand, with values that don't match up? I think we're at risk now not only of becoming further removed from those older than us, but becoming further removed from anyone whose views differ from our own. With so much opportunity to communicate with anyone from anywhere at the drop of a hat, I think we're all guilty of seeking to affirm rather than seeking to challenge our opinions. We've seen criticisms in the news of companies tailoring our online content in line with our search history. We're literally doing the same thing to ourselves. Not only do we choose to communicate with those who share our opinions, but we choose not to communicate with those who don't. At worst, we openly criticize them without ever having met them in our lives. The prospect of anonymity online adds a new dimension to this. It's easy to leave an insulting or sarcastic comment online, but the person who leaves that comment likely has no intention of entering into dialogue with the creator of the content. It's easier to communicate than ever before, but we're arguably getting worse at it. For all the progress that's been made, I see this as a step in entirely the wrong direction. I think there are certain values we can learn from older generations. Basic face-to-face interaction is fundamental to a cohesive society. After all, words are just one of 3 elements that work together to achieve good communication. The use of tone and body language often convey more meaning than the words themselves. From this perspective, I get the criticism of our generational obsession with instant messaging. We're skipping fundamental aspects that we need to develop good social cohesion. But this isn't to say that we shouldn't use the opportunities we have. We can use the internet well. We can use it to support each other. We can use it as a platform for meeting other people. But it can't replace real human interaction. Having a vested interest in someone who you've only ever spoken to online is frankly unnatural, and it gives us a false sense of security. I use social media as much as the next person, but I truly believe it's never a substitute for actually going out and meeting people. Equally, someone's presentation of themselves online isn't a substitute for who they really are. It's misleading, and we often make judgments about those people that go far deeper than the basis we used for our judgment. This culture of being connected via a common platform, but increasingly isolated into virtual social groups, is dividing our generation before we've even had a chance to meet each other. Now, it would be false to assume that removing the internet would stop this. Clashing social groups have always existed, but the ease of communicating online makes us all more likely to retreat into comfortable virtual social worlds. The world we live in doesn't and won't ever fit on a screen. It's messy and it requires attention just as much as we do. And as we move forward into the future, more layers will be added to its complexities and require us to communicate and to understand each other even more. Just as our world is becoming more globalized and more accessible, there has never been a greater need for good communication. Communication means listening to ideas as much as it means sharing our own. We don't need to share beliefs exactly to become harmonious, but we need to be respectful and we need to understand. If we learn how to connect with each other, with older generations, we can acquire the skills to connect with the generations that come after ours. We need to learn to connect again in the real world. Otherwise, we run the risk of traveling back into the past. Thank you for listening.